Welcome back to Open Line, everyone. I'm Rhori Johnston, sitting in the chair here tonight on NewsChannel 5+. We appreciate you tuning us in on what has been a really nice night weather-wise, but you're getting in tonight. And joining us, we are talking with the president of the local Fraternal Order of Police, James Smallwood, who is, after a busy day, giving up an hour of his time, and we appreciate you being here again. And let's go to Taylor, another one of our regulars, standing by on line one. Good evening, Taylor.
Roy, Mr. Smallwood, thanks for the show tonight.
Sure.
I got a thing I'd like to discuss here, and one of them I'll start with is one of the most naive statements I hear made all the time: I support the police 100%. Well, I'm one of those that supports the police 95%. I do not purport to feel comfortable with the 5%, if it's that high, of the group that feels so comfortable in their job and the support from the public that they can shoot someone in the back with very little cause, can stand on a man's neck till he smothers to death, and other infractions that happen. The main thing I have noticed in so many of these cases is the officers that are involved in the most serious of these cases have got a record on their personnel record that shows this Chicago fella had like 18 infractions. Now, I know police officers get reported for a lot of foolish things, which might be should be ignored as far as what I'm talking about. But there are others that have 5, 6, 10 serious things that have happened, and they are suspended for 2 days, suspended for 5 days. It happens again, and it happens again, and it happens again. And in Nashville, if the officer gets fired, we have a civil service board that will put them back to work over the objection of the firing police chief or whatever often. And I think that would be worthy of one of these university teams to do a study on this, on how many infractions that have been overrun by the civil service board, that even Mayor Bredesen felt like that was a real problem that he could never get a handle on. And again, there's no excuse. A city has a lot of money involved in training an officer, but if he is going to have infractions of mistreating the public time after time, he needs to be fired. He needs to be fired for good and not hired by the next city over. That's my point.
Thank you very much. Taylor. And let me just add to that, because I want to get in a little bit about the call for renewed officer training across the country, new procedures and policies. Obviously, we've seen these cases, and you mentioned, obviously, what happened in Minneapolis is just terrible. And we haven't brought up the Rayshard Brooks case in Atlanta. And I want to throw this in because I've heard from different people and law enforcement experts on the Rayshard Brooks shooting, saying, is it justified or not? Bottom line is, the victim was shot in the back running away. I know he had a police officer's taser in his hand and pointed it at that officer. But there was talk that the officers were afraid that they would be teased by other officers for two officers letting one man get away from them. Is that the kind of culture that should be going on? It's almost like a fraternity, if that's the case. How do you respond to all of this? There's a lot there, I understand.
Yeah, you might have to help me remember some of it. To Taylor's point, he says that the Civil Service Board brings back all the folks that have been terminated by the police department. More often than not, that is not the case.
Okay.
I think in the last several years, the Civil Service Board has actually sided with the police department more than they have with the employee on those kind of disciplinary hearings or terminations. So, that board exists to ensure appropriate due process. And if somebody needs to be terminated because they're a bad employee, then they need to be terminated. But you have to be able to build an appropriate case and show that an individual does not need to work here anymore. And in some instances, while somebody may want to terminate an officer, they either haven't built a good enough case, or they're just going after somebody who is still a good employee and doesn't need to be fired.
Right. But what about the retraining and changing policies and procedures to make sure the banning of chokeholds and things of that nature?
Well, the thing about banning of chokeholds, Nashville has had chokeholds banned for more than 20 years, I believe. Mm-hmm. It's not been in our training. It's against the law if you've not been trained to employ one. So this idea that this is a new announcement that we're not allowing chokeholds anymore, there's nothing new about it. We've been doing that for a long time. More training, yeah, absolutely. We want as much training as we can possibly get, but that takes manpower and money. You have to spend money to train your officers. To take them off the street, you have to be able to put another one in the street in their place while they're being trained. And we are very big advocates of offering as much training as we possibly can. As the FOP, we offer free trainings for our members whenever we can get our hands on it. So yeah, I'm a big proponent of making sure that our training is often and is competent and is with the times, but it costs time, it takes manpower.
Have you watched the Rayshard Brooks body cam footage that Atlanta police released? In my view, yes. Those two officers, and I watched the whole thing from both cameras, and then also saw the surveillance camera, I believe, from that Wendy's restaurant, up until obviously the tragedy, the shooting death of Mr. Brooks. The officers seemed to follow everything by the book and treat him fairly and ask him questions and give him a chance to explain himself. So what went wrong here? What do you think went wrong watching that?
Well, when you look at a lot of these critical incidents across the country, not just Rayshard Brooks, but any critical incident we're facing, usually it involves some sort of failure to comply with a lawful order given by a police officer. And while we try to maintain professionalism and while we try to de-escalate the situation, it seems like that somebody on the other side doesn't want to do that, and they escalate the situation. I don't know all the intimate details of the Brooks case, obviously, because I'm not in Atlanta, but that individual escalated the situation, forced officers into a confrontation where they had to fight him. He then struck one of the officers with his fist in the face, if I remember right on the video, disarmed the taser from an officer, started running, and then turned, pointed, and fired the taser at the officer. And anybody that suggests that we would take another individual's life because we're worried about being teased, that's absolutely ridiculous. Nobody wakes up in the morning and comes into work and wants to take another person's life. No officer. We don't want to be in that position. We never want to have to do it. But we know that someday that may have to happen. We may have to defend our community or ourselves from the impending danger. And just a week before in Atlanta, the district attorney charged several police officers for using a taser on somebody and called it a lethal weapon. And now here we are a week later, and he's charging officers for defending themselves from what the district attorney said was a lethal weapon.
All right, let's go to Jediah on line 5. Jediah, thanks for holding. We appreciate it. What's on your mind? You there, Jediah? All right, we will skip that, and let's go to line 6 next. And Lucy. Hey, Lucy.
Hey, y'all.
Thanks for calling in. One of our regulars. Go ahead.
Well, Mr. Johnson, you used the term teased. I think when it comes to fraternal orders and brotherhoods and sisterhood kind of organizations, anybody that belongs to a group, when you don't go along with the group, it's called cloaking. You're cloaked. You're invisible. You're dead to me. You don't exist. And it would be better if you would be teased. But when you go through that kind of torment, when you belong to an organization that's supposed to be a tight group dynamic, and then you're cloaked like you're dead to them because you wanted to do the right thing, because you followed the manuals and you followed the books. That's a hard road to go. Mr. Smallwood, recently Buford Toon passed away, and I remember when Buford Toon came on the police department here in Nashville. And through the years, I'd see Officer Toon through Nashville, and I roll down my window and holler at him and make fun of him being a cop or whatever, just trying to get his goat. And I kid you not, Mr. Toon was the same way that he was when he came on the police department and up to the day he died. He was consistent in his character. He was consistent. And if he was different than what he showed me, he did a damn good job at hiding it if he was a big butthole. But he was what you would call a professional. And if you think those old cops back then had it easy, you don't know some of the horrors that have come out of the streets of Nashville, even in the past 100 years. So no cop in this town has really ever had an easy way to go. Nobody's ganging up on the police department here. The reason I'm calling is this Vanderbilt poll. 86% of the people support the police. Of course we do. That's why they voted for the Cobb to come in the Citizens Board, is because of the cops, that we don't want to be tortured like that and be put through all this kind of stuff when they really want to say something or do something. Now, as a taxpayer, this is how I look at it. When you beat somebody or shoot somebody, and when a perpetrator hurts a cop, I have to pay for it both ways. I want it to be professional pay for a professional organization. And if we can't communicate with somebody, then we're trying to speak up for the cops who are going through the gruel of it and then getting caught in the middle between the public, the perpetrators, and their own organization. That is a hell to live in, and keep it cool. And you can sit there and ride 10 years and be okay, and then one day the good cop loses it. Those are the people that I don't want to throw away.
Right.
And as far as the training manual goes, they said they're going to make some changes about this chokehold. This is what I want in the training manual. I don't want that just put in the manual. I want it explained as to why you don't do this, what physically it causes to somebody's brain, the damage you can do to their neck. Ask any high school wrestler, and he'll tell you why they're not allowed to go around somebody's neck. So, I'm just saying, don't say we don't support you. All of a sudden we do, and we're not saying anything. People have been supporting the cops all the time. I love getting stuck in traffic downtown in these events and yelling at the cops, get up off your butt and get this traffic going. My dead husband's body's thawing out the trunk, and I got to get it somewhere. And it scares me when the ones that don't laugh. I don't know why the ones that don't laugh. It bothers me. I wonder what they're going through. Are they cloaked? Thank you for listening.
All right. She's always got a strong opinion. That's Lucy. A lot there as to what she said, but I think a lot of our police officers have a pretty good rapport with the community and a good sense of humor, James.
Yeah. We always like to have a good laugh with our community members. I'm not sure what she's referring to as being cloaked. As far as I know, that doesn't happen in our organization or in our department. We're all one big family. We're all here to do a job and serve our community, but certainly we're all happy to have a good laugh with folks.
All right, with that, we're going to take another break. We've got some calls lined up. James and Steve, hang on the line. We'll get to your calls when Open Line returns right after this.